It's been 10 years since the last Witcher installment, a whole decade, which is just crazy to think about. It is finally time that I revisit that universe. So, I booted up The Witcher 3. No, I didn't. I've done that way too many times. So, I decided to boot up a game that slipped under my radar at the time. The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings. Well, hold on, not just yet. You're all probably wondering why this gem slipped under my radar when it was released. Well, here's why. Back in 2011, I was fully a console gamer, and like a lot of people, The Witcher 2 completely passed me by. I didn't even know what it was at the time. What I did know was Skyrim, and when that dropped in November, it absolutely consumed me for the rest of that year and most of 2012. And it wasn't just Skyrim, Dark Souls, Assassin's Creed Revelations, Uncharted 3, Modern Warfare 3, and Batman Arkham City. Looking back, it's just completely wild how stacked 2011 was. The Witcher 2 actually came out months earlier in May of 2011, but it was a PC exclusive at the time, and without any console presence or the mainstream hype Projekt has now, it just got swallowed up. It was one of those critical darlings that hardcore RPG fans knew about, but for me, it flew totally under the radar. The Witcher 3, however, did not fly under my radar. Bought that day one, played through the whole game with my older brother. Yes, that baby freaked us out back in 2015, and since 2015, we have seen a surge of fantasy RPGs. Kingdom Come and Greedfall have some of the Witcher formula, and later the likes of Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring would shift the RPG landscape, but few evoke Witcher 2's grounded political intrigue. You're not some world-saving hero in The Witcher 2, you're caught in the crossfire of feuding kings, scheming sorceresses, underground rebels, and shadowy spies. It's a story rooted in muddy politics and personal stakes, delivering a kind of grounded, brutal realism that feels closer to Game of Thrones than the high fantasy of Lord of the Rings. However, there are clear Lord of the Rings references in this game. Those of you who read the journal entries and the Dwarven Mines of Moira, I mean Vergen, know what I'm talking about. If you played The Witcher 1, you'll automatically pick up on the massive leap forward The Witcher 2 was. It showcased how ambitious CDPR is, especially in its cinematics. It's a bit clunky compared to games nowadays, and I did run into a few bugs. Apparently alt-tabbing fixes this issue if you get stuck, at least it did for me. Oh, and if you do the tutorial, which you should as it explains the combat pretty well for the most part, except there are some things that it doesn't quite explain too well, so I'll provide some tips. The first tip is how to properly repost. My recommendation, just don't do it. I never use it, don't know how to use it, and I luckily somehow got it to work in the tutorial, but I won't sit here and pretend I know how to properly repost. I don't, and it feeds into my main complaint of the game, and that's the combat, which we will delve into in just a bit. Another issue I ran into was with mutagens. These are used to upgrade abilities, but you can only use them on abilities that have a mutagen slot, and what this tutorial doesn't tell you is what that slot looks like. These slots are indicated by these tiny circles on the ability. Mutagens can only go in abilities that have this. Don't be like me and try to slot this in abilities that don't have this, because nothing will happen. They definitely could have made this bigger and shown in the tutorial what it looks like, but they didn't. So I wanted to share with you all what these mutagen slots look like, because if I got confused, then chances are some of you probably will as well. The final tip I want to share in terms of what's offered in the tutorial is the difficulty setting. At the end of the tutorial is a combat test, and after that test, the game will recommend a difficulty to you. Now, this is a really neat idea. I liked it a lot. But please, please don't be like me. I played through the game on hard and do not recommend it at all. Just play on normal or easy. This game is a favorite of mine because of the narrative, not the combat. There is a lot of jank to this game, and it can lead to scenarios that are strictly just not fun or even fair. The boss fights primarily. It's a really old engine, and that's probably why the hitboxes are so bad. But yeah, don't bother playing on the harder difficulties. And if you do, hats off to you. You're in for a hell of a time. But at the end of the day, the narrative and atmosphere still holds up and even outclasses some modern games. I was truly surprised at how brutal and gritty this game was, and I loved every second of that brutality. What can I say? I'm a sucker for it. Has to be done right though. You can't just have non-stop gore. It needs to be done intelligently and strategically in order to be impactful, and this game does just that. So yeah, it was incredibly exciting to not only jump back into the world of The Witcher, but to also experience a story that I missed. This was many players' first Witcher game, especially on Xbox 360. Sorry, I had to play it. It's iconic and I will forever love that sound. Anyways, the game was impressive. It looked incredible for the time, and the branching narrative showed again just how ambitious CDPR was becoming, but it also had a reputation for being tough, like brutally tough, especially in the opening hours. Take this cave for instance. I died over and over trying to kill these monsters and progress further into the cave. Nothing will work. I tried the Igni, the fire-based skill, it barely did any damage. I tried traps, those didn't help at all, but finally, I tried Quen. This cast a magical shield around me for a short time. This allowed me to kill these guys pretty fast. Quen is OP in this game, by the way. Don't sleep on it at all. And all of this jank did force me to experiment and adapt, which was nice. I appreciate that approach. However, the combat is still obnoxiously clunky. The only thing I can really praise about the combat is that it wasn't trying to hold my hand. And honestly, that's something a lot of games today are guilty of, which just sucks the life out of the experience. But even with that difficulty, it still managed to become the game that really put CDPR on the map. Even though I missed it back then, revisiting it now feels like uncovering a piece of gaming history that I totally slept on, and I'm here for it. Except for the encounter with the assassin in Chapter 1. That fight is terrible. Honestly, most boss fights are terrible and completely unfair. I did eventually manage to defeat them though by turning the difficulty down to easy and then turning it back up after the fight was over. Sure, you can load a previous save, craft gobs and gobs of bombs and take care of them that way, but I'm lazy and I didn't want to do that. Even though this combat sucks, it still has its flashy moments, and it's the reason The Witcher 3's combat is so good. They made several mistakes with this game, but by doing so, they were able to craft one of the greatest games of all time, The Witcher 3 of course. But yeah, the combat in this game is incredibly frustrating. There's quick time events in The Witcher 2 as well, and I know a lot of people hate these, especially when it leads to an instant death, which some of these do. The world in The Witcher 2 is without a doubt smaller than The Witcher 3, but the devs did a great job at making the world feel dense by packing the zones with layered quests. Most of the main quests are very interesting and intriguing. There's a clear emphasis on human politics, war, and morally gray decision making, which we'll get into that more in a little bit. And this is really what sets the game apart. The side quests in The Witcher 2, however, just don't hold up the way that the main story does, and definitely not compared to The Witcher 3. Most of them are short, straightforward, and lack any real narrative weight or branching outcomes. They often feel like basic errands or monster hunts with little character depth or emotional payoff. The quest tracking system doesn't help either. It's clunky, vague, and can even make simple objectives frustrating to follow. While there are a few standout moments like the haunted hospital in Flotsam, most side quests come off as forgettable filler rather than meaningful world building. CDPR clearly hadn't hit their stride with side content yet. Their focus was all on the big, branching story choices. But the game world and quest designs mean nothing if the visual presentation and character design sucks. Spoiler alert, they don't. And for 2011, the character models and lighting were cutting edge, and today, the way they affect the atmosphere still holds up. The atmosphere is so captivating that not a single time did I sit there and think how outdated the game looks. It looks great. And one of the reasons it still holds up is its NPCs. They show more personality than I expected, and that's due to strong writing and animations. Even the body language is fantastic. CDPR really does excel in its NPC design and making their interactions as realistic as possible. And on top of all of that, the game contains a strong use of color and contrast. Flotsam's forest, Vergen's gloom, and Lochmoin's grandeur still pop today. The combat in The Witcher 2 is again rough. Janky hitboxes, awkward animations, and clunky movement make it feel dated even for its time. One of the most frustrating mechanics is the potion system. You can't drink potions in combat, which means unless you already know what fight is coming up, you'll likely never use them on your first attempt. It turns what should be a smart tactical system into a trial and error loop. Die, reload, prep potions, try again. That's not satisfying. It's just tedious, and the enemy hit detection is also very inconsistent. You'll dodge roll out of danger, but still take damage as if you never moved, and the game punishes you harshly for getting hit in the back, even when it's the engine's fault. Enemies are also tightly leashed to their zones, which means you can cheese fights by baiting them to their invisible boundaries, getting a few hits in, and running back safely. That kind of jank can be exploited, sure, but it doesn't make the combat feel any better. The early hours of The Witcher 2 can be brutally punishing as well, especially on higher difficulties. Like I said earlier, just play on easy or normal. The game is skilled in a way that front loads a lot of that challenge, and until you start crafting better gear, even basic encounters can wipe you out pretty fast. But as you progress and start finding diagrams, which are blueprints used for crafting, things gradually become more manageable. One early tip, if you want a serious boost before heading into chapter 2, make sure to craft the Chiron armor. You'll get the diagram after defeating the Chiron in chapter 1, but you actually have to go over and loot his body. I didn't do that the first time, so I had to walk all the way back and loot his body. But anyways, once you loot it and you get the Chiron diagram, it's easily one of the best early game sets that you can get. And if you're missing materials, just buy them from the merchant. And if you buy them and then they're out of stock, you can just meditate for like 24 hours and then they will be back in stock. So you can just infinitely keep buying those materials. But yeah, the animations and hitboxes really hold this game back in terms of the combat. The animations can feel janky by today's standards, but even compared to games of its time, they feel weightier, and the hitboxes simply just don't help them at all. There are countless times I got hit, even though the object hitting me was not hitting me. The assassin fight in chapter 1 being the biggest example of this. It was very, very frustrating, but after you get a good handle on that jank, you kind of know where to go to ensure you don't get hit, and it's not as frustrating to deal with, and you can use that jank to your advantage, but again, that doesn't make it good. Let's talk more about the gameplay systems, specifically potions and skill points. As you progress through the game, completing quests and defeating enemies will level you up, but here's the thing. Monster hunting gives you barely any XP. It's kind of ironic considering you're playing a professional monster slayer in a game where you want to explore and fight monsters and feel like a Witcher. The progression system doesn't really reward that. Most of your experience comes from quests, so grinding monsters just isn't worth your time. If you want to level up efficiently, stick to the story and side quests. You get skill points when leveling up, and these can be used to dump into 4 different skill trees: the training, magic, alchemy, and swordsmanship tree. And I would recommend you choose one of those and get the adrenaline perks. They're pretty much the ultimate perks at the end of the tree as soon as you can. Most nodes allow more than 1 skill point, but I would ignore upgrading those abilities until after you get an adrenaline node from one of the trees. There are so many cool ways to build your character, so I suggest you do what sounds fun to you. But for those that want to know, I pretty much dumped all my points into the swordsmanship tree. That tree essentially makes your sword attack stronger and you tankier. But if you want to enhance your potions, put some points in alchemy, or if you really like using your signs, grab some buffs from the magic tree. I did enhance my Quen sign from the magic tree to upgrade my magic shield to further that tanky playstyle I very much like. And just like your build decisions shape your combat experience, your dialogue choices shape the story. The dialogue system in The Witcher 2 does have its ups and downs though. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is the timed responses. More often than not, I'd still be reading the options when the timer ran out, and it would just auto-select the default response. It's definitely a reading skill issue, I know, but still, I just don't think these are necessary. Thankfully, those moments are pretty rare though. On the positive side, the branching dialogue trees and the hidden morality system, where your choices subtly change the story, are genuinely great. They give your decisions real weight, even if the game doesn't always spell out the consequences right away. And it should be no surprise to you that all the main story quests are just perfect. The stories with the assassin, Yorveth, and Saskia are very well done. They all interweave perfectly, and the choices you make in these quest lines define the game. There's 16 potential outcomes for this game. Again, just displaying how ambitious CDPR was and still is. The game is broken down into 4 sections: prologue, chapter 1, 2, and 3. The biggest choice you'll make early on is choosing Roach or Yorveth. Each has their very own chapters 2 and 3. Shout out to the elves though, I stand with them. That mid-game branching is executed perfectly for this game. Very few RPGs split their campaign in half based on one major choice like The Witcher 2 does. And to aid that process, the game is again structured into these self-contained acts, and structuring the game like a trilogy of acts gives each chapter its own arc and focus. All of that, coupled with meaningful choices that avoid binary morality, really puts The Witcher 2 above many other RPGs for me. A lot of modern RPGs still lean into clear-cut good versus evil decisions, which makes those choices feel predictable and honestly a bit dull, but Witcher 2 doesn't do that. It thrives in the gray areas where every choice feels like it carries weight and none of them are clean. That approach isn't just smart design, it shows how well the developers understood the source material. I've been reading the books lately, and moral ambiguity is baked into Geralt's character. He's often forced to choose between bad outcomes, what some call the lesser evil, but he resents being put in that position. One of the most memorable moments from the book The Last Wish is when Geralt must decide whether to kill Renfri to prevent her from massacring innocent villagers. An impossible choice between evils that perfectly illustrates his moral struggle. The game capturing that feeling so well just makes it all hit harder. Since we're on the topic of the books, which I highly recommend by the way, if you've read The Last Wish, characters like Letho the Kingslayer gain extra weight as his presence directly connects to Sepkoski's world and themes. Many of the moral dilemmas and political intrigue in Witcher 2 echo the tone and complexity of the stories you find in the books, which deepen the experience for me. And unlike the typical stoic hero, Witcher 2 lets you shape Geralt's moral compass through your choices. He struggles with difficult decisions, reflecting the ambiguity we see in the books, where there are rarely clear heroes or villains, except for Triss. She sucks, and she's annoying. Geralt evolves from the somewhat amnesiac lone monster hunter of the first game into a figure deeply entangled in political conflicts and personal loyalties, and the game shows how even a monster hunter can be taken advantage of. The shift gives him much more depth, showing how his world and identity grow beyond just hunting beasts. And to fully understand the political chessboard and underlying motives of each of the main characters, you'll definitely need to do multiple playthroughs or just watch a video of all the endings. That's what I did. And I did that because I want to put videos like this out there, and I just don't have time to do multiple playthroughs, as I'm sure many of you don't either. But for those of you that enjoy that, this game offers lots of replayability, which is always great. All right, let's talk about some of the rougher parts. While the game generally runs fine, I did run into a handful of crashes during my playthrough. If you're planning to play on PC, here's how to avoid those headaches. First, turn off Uber sampling. It's a resource hog and doesn't add much visually. Second, make sure to launch the game using the Witcher2.exe directly instead of the default shortcut the installer gives you. That simple switch helped me avoid most of the crashes. I'm playing the game via GOG, so this will be slightly different for Steam users. Since doing that, my game has not crashed a single time. If you're still having crashes, there's a plethora of mods to address them. And speaking of mods, I didn't use any for my first playthrough. If any of you have, please list in the comments some good ones, as I'd like to do a modded run in the future, and I'm sure many people watching are curious as well. And a little on the UI design, especially for the map, it's not the best. I had some trouble finding certain quest locations and NPCs, so I wanted to bring that up as well. Geralt's journey in The Witcher 2 is definitely what carries this game. It's not just about slaying monsters or chasing some grand prophecy. He's piecing together his broken memory while getting pulled into this tangled web of loyalty, betrayal, and shifting allegiances. It feels personal, like you're trying to make sense of who you were and who you want to be in this messy, morally gray world. And compared to many games today, what sets The Witcher 2 apart is that grounded adult storytelling. It's a huge part of what makes it resonate with me years later. And to quickly touch on the sound design and music, the soundtrack in The Witcher 2 carries a haunting cinematic quality that elevates big story moments and gives each location its own identity, whether it's the eerie calm of Flotsam Woods or the tension building in a political standoff. Combat sounds feel weighty and impactful, from sword clashes to the crackle of signs. However, the sound your sword makes when clanging off a shield is downright jarring because shield enemies are just a pain to fight in general. Despite everything that went down with Cyberpunk 2077's rocky launch, a lot of people, myself included, still believe in CD Projekt Red, and honestly, that says a lot. The post-launch support, the massive updates, and that Phantom Liberty expansion, it all helped turn things around, and it's been a legit redemption arc for them. Now, with The Witcher 4 in development, there's a lot of hype, but also a lot of caution. After Cyberpunk, people are a lot more hesitant to buy into promises without seeing results. Still, the excitement is real for me at least. I'm hoping CDPR can deliver something that lives up to their legacy. And going back to The Witcher 2, you can really feel that early hunger, that scrappy underdog energy where they were out to prove themselves. It's the kind of creative fire fans hope they can tap into again with their next big RPG, that being The Witcher 4. But yeah, I enjoyed this game a lot. It was one of the best narrative experiences I've had in a game. And as someone who writes these videos that you guys watch, and someone who wants to create a game one day replaying The Witcher 2, has shown and reminded me how storytelling, narrative, and gameplay should be done. It's an excellent game to study for anyone interested in storytelling and how to properly use external and internal motivations to help drive your characters forward. It's a masterclass in pacing, and that's because every scene in this game displays the objective, the conflict, and the outcome. It is a game that encourages devs to take risks on story structure and the blurry lines between right and wrong. Thanks so much for your patience with this video. It took a while to get out the door. Between getting ready to move, working full-time, and being a dad, finding the time to dive deep into a full RPG isn't always easy, so if you've watched this far, thank you so much for your support. If you're revisiting this game or have already experienced it, I would love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop a comment. I do read every single one of them. I absolutely love RPGs, but they do take me a while to get through, so I'll also be covering smaller projects and demos like Hell Is Us, Scabland, War-Torn, and more in between. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is the next RPG I'll be jumping into, so expect another deep dive like this one down the road. I make these videos because I love gaming and genuinely enjoy talking about it with all of you, so thanks for being a part of that, and anyways, take excellent care of yourself, call someone you love, and goodbye!